For over half a century now, Neil Armstrong has been celebrated worldwide after making his mark in history as the first man to step foot on the moon. We all know his famous speech, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," which he made after landing on the moon. Interestingly, people have come out to say, how about one big lie from man, one giant deceit for mankind? Since the 1970s, moon landing of 1969 has been debunked from several quarters, despite the event being watched live by 6 million people along with the numerous photos taken by the men on the moon. In fact, these photos have been the significant proof tendered by the proponents on this theory. Now, America is widely known for its constant feats in innovation and technological breakthroughs. Why then do people doubt their success in the moon landing mission? The primary reason for this disbelief is the backstory of the moon landing mission embarked upon by the American government. Let's take a quick look at history. On April 12, 1961, the Soviet Union successfully launched a human into space, making it the first successful attempt in the world. During this time, the Soviet Union and the US had an intense long-age competition going on. The Soviet Union had successfully launched the first satellite to orbit the Earth, which they called the Sputnik mission. The Soviet Union also had the Luna 2, which was the first spacecraft to touch the moon. At this time, the US had completed the Project Mercury in 1958 and the Project Gemini in 1961. When the Soviet Union successfully launched a human into space later in 1961, the US was bent on achieving a much more remarkable feat. In President John F. Kennedy's words, the US would establish a space program which promises dramatic results in which we could win. In a nutshell, the mission was born out of pure competition and determination to win. On May 25, 1961, the US announced a mission for human exploration to the moon, which would be accomplished before 1970. The center of the mission was building a spacecraft that could safely take a human to the moon and back. This mission became known as the Apollo project. Sadly, lives were lost in the course of accomplishing this mission. During a pre-launch test for Apollo 11 in 1967, fire ignited in the spacecraft, resulting in a fire outbreak in the Kennedy Space Center. 3 astronauts, Edward White, Roger Chaffee, and Virgil Grissom, lost their lives in the tragic accident. Every other test until Apollo 7 was done without crews to prevent further casualties. After 6 years of spacecraft testing and 13 spacecraft launches, the Apollo 11 was settled on as the spacecraft for the mission. The spacecraft comprised the command module called the Columbia, which was the section of the craft that would return to Earth. The lunar module called the Eagle, it was the part that would land on the moon, and lastly, the service module, which supplied the crew's essentials like oxygen and water. The Saturn V rocket, the tallest and most powerful rocket in history, was used to launch the 3 modules. At 1:32 p.m. on July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 was launched from the Kennedy Space Station, with 3 men on board. Neil Armstrong was the mission commander, Edwin "Buzz" Aldrin was the lunar module pilot, and Michael Collins was the command module pilot. Within 76 hours, the aircraft had traveled 240,000 miles, entering the lunar orbit on July 19th. At 1:46 p.m. the following day, the Eagle operated by Armstrong and Aldrin was separated from the command module manned by Collins. Collins orbited the lunar while Armstrong and Aldrin remained in the Eagle. Armstrong radioed the mission control house stating, "The Eagle has wings." 2 hours later, the Eagle began descending to the moon's surface. At 4:17 p.m., the spacecraft landed on the edge of the Sea of Tranquility, located on the northern hemisphere of the moon. Armstrong then radioed the mission control house again, stating, "The Eagle has landed." People have cause to believe that the Eagle never landed, and the whole moon mission, watched live by 6 million people across the world, was a hoax. This claim came after multiple cover-ups were uncovered, like the Watergate scandal and the Vietnamese War by the US government. The conspiracy theories and suspicions surrounding John F. Kennedy's assassination did not help matters. To get an in-depth understanding of the Watergate scandal and John F. Kennedy's assassination, watch some of our previous videos. Following the dirt dug up on the US government, Americans and people all around the world could no longer take the US government's word for it. So, naturally, theorists looked into the moon landing event from years back and found some inconsistencies. The proponents of this theory believe that the US government cooked up this lie out of desperation to beat the Soviet Union's significant space accomplishments. How come there were pictures of these men on the moon and live videos of the event seen by people? Well, these theorists have an answer to this as well. They believe that Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins were actors in the moon landing movie set in either Hollywood Hills or Area 51. Now, let's look at the various evidence debunking the Apollo 11 moon landing. One of the most famous pictures of the moon landing is that of the American flag erected on the moon. In this particular picture, the flag appears creased, like it was flapping around. This made people wonder how, since there is no air on the moon that could have caused the breeze to move the flag around. The proponents of this theory decided that the flag was evidence that there was never a moon landing, and the American government shot the entire event in a film studio to deceive everyone. In addition, in all the pictures taken by these astronauts on the moon, there were no visible stars, and the entire sky was pitch black. The moon is reported to have several stars shining from a distance, which is very visible. The pitch black skies in these moon pictures don't tell the same story. These theorists are once again convinced that those pictures were not taken on the moon. Another reason why a faction of the public does not believe in the moon landing is that they hold the belief that the moon is a habitat for aliens. So even if humans did have access to the moon, they can't invade an alien space. Scott C. Waring, one of the proponents of this conspiracy theory, claimed that he discovered some images in NASA's Image Atlas in 2013 proving that the moon is an alien space, including a photo showing a UFO on the moon. He claimed that NASA has since deleted these pictures to cover up their lies. Waring added that the surface of the moon covered in debris, dust, and particles is just a disguise, and is actually a gate which opens up for spaceships to enter the secret realm of aliens. He claimed he saw and analyzed a picture of the Giordano Bruno crater, a crater on the moon, and observed old structures of about 100 million years old in it. He believed that many of the structures looked like damaged spaceships with reflective roofs. The last piece of evidence we will be examining today also has to do with one of the pictures taken during the moon landing. In one of the pictures, a reflection of the astronauts was visible on the ground. If this were Earth, it would have been a regular occurrence. However, if the sun was the only source of light there, as it should be, then we shouldn't see the astronauts' reflections. This, just like the rest, foregrounds the theory that the moon landing was a movie shot in a studio, and the lighting equipment made the reflections possible. As convincing as these pieces of evidence may be, they have also been debunked, and NASA and other professionals in the space field have tendered explanations for each issue. Let's review each one of the answers to these arguments. On the issue of the wrinkled flag, NASA explained that the flag taken to the moon was not a regular flag like the one usually mounted here on Earth, because such a flag would not stand erect if put on the moon since there is no air there. The flag taken to the moon was supported by a horizontal rod to enable it to stand upright. So when the men attempted to erect its pole into the ground, they wiggled it from left to right, making the flag flap around. Scientists agree that stars are visible on the moon and the sky shouldn't be pitch black. However, the issue here is the camera used in taking the pictures. Cameras focus on big, apparent objects in an environment while eliminating other less conspicuous things in the background. The moon landing pictures were taken during the day, and the astronauts' suits were also very white, so the tiny stars were washed out. In the case of the reflections, the sun is indeed the only source of light on the moon. However, the lunar ground reflects the sun, thereby providing another form of illumination from the ground. This provides shades of light which reflect the astronauts. The shadow of a plaque taken to the moon by the astronauts can also be seen in some pictures. Finally, NASA had a terse reply to Scott Waring's arguments. It explained that the sight of objects on the moon, like the old structures, is simply a mirage. It's a psychological trick called pareidolia. It's been 53 years since Neil Armstrong was reported as the first man to walk on the moon, and he has been dead since 2012. Yet, a good number of people still don't believe he achieved this feat. To be candid, wouldn't it be fascinating to know that humankind did travel to the moon and has experienced its environment? On the other hand, if the moon landing never happened, we are living a big lie, which we will keep on passing down to generations. Which of these arguments do you find more convincing? Was the moon landing a reality or a hoax? Let us know what you think in the comment section.